Please be aware that moving forward with these validation tutorials, you'll need to download the new starting file from Moodle in order to proceed. So today we're going to cover MS Access Validation Lookup versus Value List. Our objectives for this video are: discuss the need and the end state, naming convention clarification. We're going to look at method 1, which is the lookup validation, limit to list and what that does. We're also going to look at creating value list lookups and a simple list of options validation using custom agenda. Then we're also going to consider a long list of options, band genre. Need and end state preview. So go to Moodle, Unit 2, scroll down to the bottom where we have the video guides. You'll see our previous video guides, and what we're going to look through is the validation end state. So download the file. Should take a minute to load, and open up the database, and we'll review the changes that we are going to make today. So the first thing you'll notice is that all the tables and the query have been renamed, and this follows the new naming convention that you're going to use from now on. So if you open up the band table, nothing much has changed in here other than the fact that we've now got a drop down list for genre on, well, band genre. So at the moment Enter Shikari are a rock band, Royal Republic are a rock band, but Big Shack and Stormzy are hip-hop. Now hip-hop doesn't appear in this list here, but the validation doesn't make the user enter one of these fields. The user is free to add additional genres. This is just a time-saving device for the user interface. So moving on to the concert table, big changes in this table. What we've done to make life easier moving forward is we've separated out the start date, the start time, the end date and the end time. And the reasons for this is it makes validation a lot easier moving forward. Then you open up the customer table. The only thing that's changed here is you've got a genre, agenda, and you have a lookup value there. Now the other point of it is that the ticket table hasn't changed and the venue hasn't changed. Just going back to the customer, however, unlike the band genre, you cannot enter any value you want to in the gender table. So for example, if I enter a J, press enter, so MS Access will come back with an error saying the text you entered isn't an item in the list. So you'll have to be forced to either select male or female for that. So this is the end state, and now we're going to go through steps to achieve these outcomes. So the next section is we're going to cover naming convention clarification. So I'm going to explain why we've decided to change the naming convention moving forward. So we're going to use something called Hungarian notation. It's a system that requires a 3-letter mnemonic value so that the programmer can remember the name of the data type, a suggestive value so that others can read the code, no spaces, and capital letter for all new words. So wider examples. Int score, int capital S score, is a variable that is an integer used to keep score. So you've got the 3-letter mnemonic, and then you've got the descriptive value or the suggestive value following it. Str name is a variable that is a string containing letters which will hold names. So access examples, how does this affect us? TBL tickets, that is a table that holds ticket information. So the change here is, instead of our old database, we've got tickets followed by TBL. We're doing it the other way around, just to keep in line with Hungarian notation. So the next one is QRY, concert info, capital C, capital I. And that's a query that combines venues with bands and concert times. And then finally FRM, capital N, new, capital C, concerts, a form that allows the user to set new concert dates. So renaming our tables then. So if you navigate back to Moodle, click the starting file, download that, open it up. Now the starting file will already have the tables renamed. So if you do want to do this on your own time, you can literally just right click on the name of the table and then press the rename button, and then that will allow you to rename the object. This applies for any object within our accessed objects navigator. So in the next section of the video we are going to cover method 1, lookup validation limit to list option. This is a very straightforward process, and it literally involves one combo box in the properties of the lookup tab on any given value. So we'll have a look at that now. So the aim of this section is to create a lookup within the gender of the customer. So at the moment the gender text file has data within it, but it doesn't have the drop down box and the limit to list value that we want to enact on the field. So if you right click on the table, go into design view and look at the gender field. The data type is correct as it is, but it doesn't have any validation rules on it at the moment. So let's change our field size. Now it's going to be M or F, so the field size will be 1. There's no format, there's an input mask, must have a mandatory letter. The validation rule in this instance is going to be F or M. Now from this you just press tab. If you press tab it tries to fill out the function of the anything that covers M. So in this instance you can either click off it and then it formats the field for you, or you can type it in with the correct formatting. The formatting that it inserts to help you out is really just like a shortcut for working with validation rules to make sure that you enter it in a format that the computer can understand. So in this instance we've got a limited number of values that we can use, so we need to specify to the user that they must have an M or an F and they can't put their own value in. So the validation text will go along the lines of, please enter a gender, comma, F for female or M for male. Required is yes. So what that will do now, the validation rule, is if the user doesn't enter the F or the M in, the validation text will appear to correct the error. So we'll save the changes to the table. Now some data may be lost because we're applying a validation rule to pre-existing data, but fortunately there's no violations, so we know that for a fact. So if we go into the customer table and you click on, so if you go into the customer table and you try and enter a different gender into the field and press enter, it triggers the validation text. What it doesn't do, however, is enable the drop-down box to allow the user to easily pick between the two. So in order to do that, go back into design view, you click on gender, short text, you load the lookup wizard via the drop-down box, and in this instance you're not going to look up field from a different table, you're going to type the field, type the values in that you want. So press next from there, and at this point it's just a simple case of adding M or F into the columns. You go next and we'll tick limit to list, and what that does is it will limit the user's input to having to select one of the options in the drop down box. So we'll press finish. Now the limit to list will appear in the lookup here, but that does exactly the same thing as this F or M validation rule. Both fields are perfectly fine, they do the same thing. Now why would you want to do a limit to list as opposed to a validation rule? Well, one instance might be if you've got a really long list, maybe you've got genres in the band table where you've got 200 different genres. You don't want to type out each one of those individually in the validation rule. You just want to have a tick box that you can just check, and it will say, yeah, we're only going to restrict values to this long list. So if you go to the customer table, go into datasheet view, it will save it automatically, and you click on the values and then you'll be able to select male or female in the gender table. So the next part of the tutorial is we're going to cover long list of options for band genre, but we're not going to limit to list this time. So open up your band table, and what you'll have is the band genre, and you won't have a drop down box at the moment, so we need to go into design view. Once in design view, we click on the band genre field and just have a quick look over the validation rules to make sure that we've got something in place already. So in this instance, we want to change the data type from short text to lookup wizard. We're going to make sure the first button is selected, which will get the fields wrong. We want to take the second option, apologies, and then you're going to enter in a number of genres appropriate to music. So your list can vary from mine. I'm just going over the main ones. If you know for a fact that hip hop or grime is a genre, then you can put those in as well. There are literally hundreds of genres that you can choose from. Okay, so in this instance we're not going to limit to list because we still want the user to have freedom of inputting their own genres. So we press finish and we go back to datasheet view, and you'll find that you have the drop down box which gives the user the option of adding additional fields in. But at the same time you can still enter in your own genres yourself, so Ed Sheeran, cheese. So let's save that. So the last section of our video tutorial is we're going to cover additional validation rules and formatting. So in this part of the tutorial we're going to go through each individual field and see if we can add any additional validation controls to make sure that we maintain data integrity. So open up your band table, go into design view, and let's just review. So we've got band ID, which is an auto number. We don't need to apply anything to that. We've got band name, we've got a field size, we don't need an input mask, we don't need a default value per se. We've got a validation rule, validation text is there, and we've got the required field checked. Genre, we've already just gone through that, so there's nothing to do in the band table. Now concert table, we do have some work to do here. We've already created a lookup for the band ref and the venue ref, but we've got some new fields in start date, start time, end date, and end time to effect. So first of all, go on start date. One of the first things we need to do is change the format of it. So we want to make sure that they don't enter the information in words or any crazy stuff like that. So you just select the short date format. Now, as a result of that, you can use Access's default dialogues to apply an input mask. So you click on the input mask dialog box, and then in this instance we've got a start date, so it's going to be a short date. Find the short date, press next, next again, and finish. And what that does is it generates an input mask for you. Really good if you forget how to write the input mask. So this is one of the cases where the input mask will be in Access and you can use it. There's no default value, but we do need a validation rule, so we're going to ask the user, please enter the start date in the following format. So day, month, year. Apologies. That needs to go into validation text, and the validation rule is not null. Okay, the required, that will have to be yes, and we'll move on to the next one. So start time, your format is going to be in, we don't want long time because we don't really care if a gig is at 20 seconds past midnight. We're not going to go into that level of detail. This isn't like a stopwatch app, it's just like a gig app. So we're just going to go short time. So the input max from that, you go into it, and you're going to change that to short time. Press next, press finish. Validation rule is not null. Validation text, please enter a start time in 24-hour format. It might not be obvious to the user that you want it in that format as it requires it, so you just need to make sure that they are aware of that. So we've got another end date. I'm going to select that as a short date. Input mask, same procedure. That's a date, short date. Validation rule is not null. Validation text, please enter the end date in day, month, year. Required is yes. And then finally we've got another end time. So you're going to go short time, input mask as short time. Your validation rule is not null. Validation text, please enter the concert end time in 24-hour format. Required, yes. Okay, and that should do for our concert table. And we've learned some new stuff about date validation there. So the customer table, we've done all the validation that we need to do there. So that's fine as it is. And the table for tickets, there's no issues on that. If a data type is set to a price, then it won't make a difference there. In addition to that, venue, the postcode field works. Postcodes cause a little bit of controversy in the IT community because there's never an input mask that covers things perfectly. However, our input mask does cover it perfectly, but the exception is that there's a slight formatting issue between single letter postcodes such as E1s, which is in London, so it will put a space in there, but it still will accept all values. So there's nothing to be done with the postcode values. That is all for today. So we're just going to do a review of our objectives. We've discussed the need and end state, so the reasons why we need to create these validation rules. We've covered naming convention, and you should utilize Hungarian notation moving forward. Please use this video as a reference file if you ever forget. We've covered limit to list and how that drop-down box affects lookups as well as list values. We've covered creating list lookups, simple list of options such as the customer genre, gender, and long list of options including band genre, one being mandatory, one being optional. And we've also covered additional validation rules. So save your work, you'll be able to utilize that database moving forward. If you had any problems, open up the end state and just compare your work to the end state and see if you can figure out what the error is. Any questions, email me, keel.vaughan@worcestersixthformcollege.ac.uk or wsfc.ac.uk, or comment below. Thanks. Bye-bye.